Thank you very much. I should disclose at the very outset that I was asked to moderate this panel and be on it about an hour ago. So you'll have to forgive the fact that I will be doffing one cap and putting on another as best as I can. I will ask first for the panelists. I will go last with my panelist hat on to kick off with a quick round of introductions. Why don't we start at the end?
I can start. Hello, everyone, and welcome along. I'm Guillem Masferrer. I'm a partner at Asabys Partners. We are a venture capital firm based in Barcelona, investing in health innovation across technologies. We do biopharma, we do health tech, focus in Europe. And actually, we have several portfolio companies in this space, in this field, so looking forward to discuss this with my fellow panelists.
Terrific. Hi, I'm Jeff Weness. I work as head of digital investments for Otsuka Precision Health. Otsuka is a global health and wellness company. We work across medical devices, pharma, nutraceuticals. My specific focus is on digital health. We do early stage investments, as well as I lead our M&A and partnerships work. Background really briefly is 8 years in a health system, 4 years at a very large payer at United Health Group, and now in the pharma and digital health space.
Pleasure to be here. Name's Arya, and I'm the field CEO for Huma Cloud Platform at Huma, so that's one of our business units. Huma is a digital health company. We have solutions in care verticals and also research, so remote patient monitoring, patient triage, screening, as well as support with clinical trials, AI biomarkers.
I am Hamish, Grierson, CEO, and I've got to stop touching the mic, sorry. CEO and co-founder of Thriva. Thank you for pronouncing it right on the intro. We care very deeply about improving people's health span, so the proportion of life you live in good health rather than just tacking bad years onto the end. Specifically, we help people to understand what's going on inside their bodies on a proactive basis, and we have a direct-to-consumer brand where people track what's happening over time so they can understand how those shifts correlate to changes in risk, and we help them understand what to do about those things. And then we have a B2B side of the business where we power a variety of third-party use cases from pharmacy to big pharma to research, where ultimately we know that people may want to use home-based testing kits and analysis, but don't know how to do it, and we do it for them. So, moderator hat on. Everyone hates audience participation, so I'm going to accept there's some ire coming my way. But can we have a quick show of hands if you are in any way, shape, or form linked to what we might classify as decentralized trials, research, remote patient monitoring, the category of things where people are monitoring people at home? Quick show of hands. Keep your hands up if you are doing that within the biopharma space. Keep your hands up if you have actually done something with remote patient monitoring DCTs. Oh, that's actually a relatively strong percentage. Cool, all right. So I think the key question, therefore, and I'll kick it off with the first question to the panel. Why are we having this conversation now? Maybe I'll go first to Guillem.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very interesting topic that comes to mind when you think about the fact that currently we have an aging population, rising healthcare costs, the increased burden of chronic diseases. So thinking on the opportunity to have a technology and solutions that can help tackling these problems by shifting care from reactive to proactive, from episodic to continuous, from hospital-centric to patient-centric. Those are opportunities that now with technology we have at hand, although they come with challenges and risks, of course. But I think it's a one-in-a-lifetime moment in which we can have this discussion and see how can we align all the stakeholders and parties in order to make patient centricity the pillar of healthcare. And I think it's currently, as you guys know, and you guys actually are involved with some of these companies proposing these solutions, so it's a great moment to have this conversation, actually.
Thanks, Guillem. So the time is now. We've got to do what we can. Patient centricity is not a new idea, but it certainly is a powerful one. Arya, where do you guys fit into that picture, and what's your take?
Sure. So I think obviously, chronic diseases are on the rise. By 2030, it's predicted that the cost of dealing with those would be around $47 trillion, right? So, and of course, echoing what Guillem mentioned around sort of the aging population. So there's an immense pressure on the healthcare systems, and being able to also have the patient at the center where we drive insights to them through passive monitoring, as well as being able to sort of drive treatment optimization, and promote proactive care. So what we do on our side is, we basically a platform provider, right? Very flexible. We can create care pathways, launch it very quickly to the market to do these monitoring sort of activities, whether it's through connected devices, and in some cases, it may go beyond passive monitoring into active monitoring, where patients are actually interacting, reporting patient-reported outcomes, as well as engaging with various sort of learned content to basically be able to manage their condition better.
And does Europe need a Make Europe Healthy Again equivalent to what has just been announced by our friends across the pond? One-word answer.
I think it's about driving value and offering value-based care, right? So as long as we're moving in that trajectory.
Well, there's a panel on that, I believe, either later today or tomorrow, so maybe 2 or 3. Very good. Well, I think it would be remiss of us not to ask the slightly broader question, what is passive patient monitoring? Why don't we go to Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. So when I think of passive patient monitoring, and the key thing that I'm focusing on is passive. When we've tried to implement patient monitoring programs of any type, the more burden that we put on a patient, the less compliance we have and the less chance of success that we have. So for us, passive patient monitoring is the ideal situation, is that the patient provides consent and everything else happens in the background. And we're gathering data, we're analyzing data, we're giving them insights. We're giving the provider insights, potentially the payer or the pharma partner insights from that. But the load and burden on the patient is as minimal as possible. And so for that's my definition. It's really that using the available biomarkers and available data, but putting as little burden on the patient as possible.
So we tried to find areas where we would vehemently disagree with each other, because it would be a bit more interesting. So I'll dramatically say I totally disagree, Jeff.
Good.
Yes. I mean, look, in reality, I don't. All of that is true. From, I guess, our way of thinking about the world, we widen the aperture slightly to acknowledge that if your alternative to what you might otherwise be doing is getting in a car or getting on public transport to try and go somewhere to a physical site, and we, using at-home testing capability, can enable you to test something from the comfort of your home or potentially the workplace, that is a step change, an order of magnitude closer to being passive. It requires you to do a great deal less. Does it actually happen totally passively in the way that a wearable might hoover up the data from you without you doing anything? No. But I think it's important to recognize that the overarching ambition here is to step very, very clearly towards a path where the individual, the patient, again with a patient-centric lens on it, is doing something that is much, much closer to their ordinary day-to-day habit, right? They aren't having to sort of break the mold, because we know that with that comes churn and a lack of adherence to protocols that we all ultimately require them to stand by. Any other comments from Arya, Guillem, on that one?
I think it's all said. So primarily devices, and I'll probably just mention, even though I completely agree with you that, we don't want to burden the patient too much. I think to have a full idea of what's happening with the patient, say someone going through some chronic disease, it is important to also have some active participation by the patient in terms of providing some of those symptoms and other things which are not currently, we're not able to measure those passively through connected devices. But
yeah,
Makes sense.
Just to add on, I think that depending on the condition that the patient has, you can get them to do more. And in many of the cases that we're working on, they're chronic diseases where there isn't necessarily a desire on the patient's part to do a lot, in addition to what they're already doing to take care of their condition. But we have seen places where I think the key is that the patient has to be getting something back, and if the patient and they're willing to do quite a bit, if the value that they receive for that. For their effort is real and significant. There's an equation there that has to balance.
Well, why don't we get into that a little bit? Let's look more specifically at what's in it and for who. Maybe let's talk to the question first of payers and providers. What's in it for them? What's the opportunity of passive patient monitoring for them? Guillem, maybe you can lead us off, and we'll maybe go to Jeff next.
I think Jeff's opinion on that, given your background on working in these different companies, is going to be very valuable. No? But from an investor's point of view, at the end of the day, obviously, we are looking for solutions that can become a systemic change. So we are not looking for only incremental changes. I think these technologies, in a way, it's not only that you can connect the different parties across the whole healthcare journey, but align incentives. I think, as you were saying, the value of the data that can be, in a way, activated from these particular players in the whole journey, it's key on that. Obviously, considering all the security and challenges and interoperability of data across systems that need to happen, but I think it's important to find ways in which, by using a technology that makes communication faster, seamless, all agents can engage, and at the end coming back to the point that becoming the patient the center of the whole care that he or she is receiving. No? So
I agree. Jeff, what would you add to that as a man on the inside?
Yeah, so I think what's in it for the payers in general, and I'll speak from my experience in the US, are looking to lower costs. And you can lower costs primarily, they're looking at two ways. One is taking a sick patient and getting them onto a cheaper therapy. And two is taking a patient who may be on a path towards a higher expense, higher cost condition, and keeping them healthy. And if monitoring and passive monitoring can help them do one of those two things, they're very interested. So if they can use a monitoring system to determine that a patient can do just as well on a non-biologic therapy as they would on a biologic therapy, and save that money, they will adopt and provide incentives for that patient. Same thing in mental health. Pick the condition. For patients who are maybe on the edge, we'll maybe take pre-diabetes and diabetes. For a pre-diabetic patient, again, payers are interested in keeping them from progressing down the path. So their incentive is largely driven by how do they lower the cost, lower their own costs in this.
And maybe we'll go to Arya to take the other side of the supplier coin. What's, from your perspective, in it for the big pharma and CRO folks?
So I think, as part of these passive sort of data collection and your generally remote patient monitoring, because we are able to optimize treatment, so if there are, for instance, multiple stages for a particular therapeutics area, and usually patients move across various stages until they get to the right one, and usually this takes quite a while, right? So they're put on some kind of treatment pathway, it takes some time, they come back, visit their sort of doctor and run some tests, and then they switch over to the next stage. And So being able to collect all of that data and make those decisions earlier, it basically allows the patient to be maybe in the later stages of the treatment, and that's potentially where they need to be, probably from the start, right? So that's one benefit, and of course, this is supporting their assets, right? That's probably the primary, and then to also have the patient on the right treatment earlier will also maximize the impact of that treatment. So overall, obviously there's patient quality of life and the value for the patient, but obviously also the value for the pharma.
And if you're sitting there thinking, all well and good, but why aren't they doing it yet? We'll get to that. We're going to get to that in a second.
I'm curious, what do you think, what's the value to the patient?
Yeah, look, I think it really depends on whether or not you accept that the patient is going to be recipient to the information or not, because obviously in double-blind trials they can't be. But what we've seen is, so we've just been commissioned to be part of a fairly drastic change to the way that the NHS, obviously it's a single provider system largely in the UK, does what's called the over 40s health check. And you get it at 40 and 45 and 50 and it starts to ramp up. It's pretty basic. It was started 15 years ago or something, and numbers have been declining. So national take-up rates of the one kind of holistic preventative healthcare program in the UK is like sub 30% and going down. And so they are pushing it into the home. And you're going to be able to do this thing through an app with testing provided by Thriva. So the answer, I think, in that context is very different. You're talking about sort of longitudinal build-up of information and early intervention that's pretty clear-cut, where the positive is you're giving people information that they can do something with. I think the patient benefit when you're talking about not receiving the information is slightly more logistic in nature, i.e. you're just not having to go to a trial site. And I think when you look at, and I'd be fascinated to know what all three of your views are on this, when you look at the meteoric rise of our attempts to try and treat lifestyle-induced mass-scale disease, it just feels like we're not going to be able to do that from a patient monitoring perspective if you're trying to push those people in that volume into a trial site. I mean, I don't know about the rest of Europe as keenly as I do the UK. The UK system can't cope with that. There is no world in which you can just chuck all of that through primary care or some corner of secondary care. So out of interest, gents, when you think about GLP-1s and equivalents and the other attempts, whether it's the dementia mission and things like it, how do you think the opportunity dovetails specifically with the attention that part of the healthcare economy is getting right now? Good thing, bad thing? Might this be the beachhead?
I mean, it could be. I think there are, I'll maybe use mental health, which is one of the areas that we're very focused on as an example. I think that there are tremendous opportunities in mental health for passive digital monitoring to help us understand disease progression and see early indications of worsening severity, and with that, hopefully keep people on a path of health. And I think that there may be some, I don't think these aren't the sort of blockbuster drugs that GLP-1s and some others are, but as we look at these opportunities and just taking a simple biomarker like sleep and understanding what's happening with someone's sleep, and is that an indication that is a change in their sleep pattern something that might mean they need another dose of a drug. We're an investor in a couple of psychedelic companies and are doing some clinical trials in that space. Understanding dosing is really critical there, and understanding timing of dosing. So we're really excited about the potential use of these biomarkers in that space, which could be another blockbuster area potentially. It's starting to get a little more attention now in the U.S.
Notwithstanding the recent setback.
Notwithstanding that,
it will get
I think there. Yeah, I mean, I think the incoming administration has a very different view on this than the prior group did.
If you had to guess which of the areas of the current breadth of healthcare challenges is going to be the biggest unlock or opportunity for passive patient monitoring. You're trying to sell into the businesses that are doing it. You're trying to back the businesses that are cracking it. Guillem, where would you hypothesize we go?
I'm not sure if anything directly comes to mind. I think it's just this, because at the end of the day, we're talking about this. We've been talking about this for quite a while now, and I think the technology has been ready for a while. And it's true that, and maybe just linked to another point. No, what are the roadblocks that are preventing us from really taking advantage to the fullest of these capacities, of these technologies can provide? I still see a lot of challenges. I see how, again, just going to my previous point on aligning interests, but also the fact that in terms of how technology and interoperability of data and how can you implement some technologies that it's not going to become a burden for people that currently have already a super packed agenda, that do not have time to understand and to know new things. And also in terms of regulatory, we're not talking about that, or potential of reimbursement. How can reimbursement be, in a way, affected by the fact that you are implementing these technologies in the process, and adoption, of course. So I think there is still a lot of open questions that need to be, in a way, put together and try to solve how these digital solutions can really make everybody aware and using these technologies in order to get to the full capacity. But I'm actually, you guys, particularly you two, in your ventures, how are you facing these roadblocks? How do you propose solutions to those problems?
Arya, why don't you lead off with why are we? It's great, it works, it's incredible for everyone, it saves money, the patients love it, and yet it isn't universal. Why?
I think part of it is probably cultural. The culture of digital health is not maybe quite there yet everywhere. And the other is infrastructure and technology, right? So in terms of the infrastructure, for instance, maybe US is a different model, right? They have their reinvestment codes, and it's a lot easier to, say, go live with a remote patient monitoring solution because you're not asking the healthcare provider to pay. It's the insurance. And then there's also the technology and regulatory element. So, being able to launch some digital health solution that will have clinical decision support, you need the appropriate classifications. And then to be able to operate in various regions, of course, you need to go through multiple, you need to go through that journey multiple times, and it sometimes becomes quite an expensive and burdensome task. So what we've tried to do is our goal is to accelerate the adoption of digital across care and research. So now we've started working and started launching a platform which sits on that regulatory foundation based on sort of all the regions that we cover, and then other startups and businesses, even hospitals, pharma, they can come in, configure their solution, take it to market very quickly. So we're trying to basically address some of these challenges and blockers, but I'm also keen to understand it from your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that awareness, and really specifically awareness at the design stage. So, there was a mass explosion of familiarity with home-based diagnostics during the pandemic. That was great in one very narrow sense. I think everyone will be pleased not to put another swab up their nose or in their throat for the rest of their lives. But awareness of the types of methodologies and technologies that ultimately enable that home-based sample collection and laboratory analysis, it ultimately is, I think, ironically, being pulled grassroots up. So people are aware of it at the sort of patient and consumer level, much more so than they are at the clinical trial design stage. And as we all know, it's all well and good that, a CRO might understand your solution. So we're an accredited supplier for a couple of the big CROs, but they then have the challenge of upwardly contextualizing it for the people who are designing the trials. And of course, the broader canopy of challenge is risk. Anything new is risk, and we all understand full well that clinical trials, usually for very good reason, tend to be very risk adverse. And I think ultimately, what gets me somewhat more encouraged that this stuff is going to happen and happen more quickly is that the economics are screwed. There is no way that we can continue down the path that we've been on and just magically expect things to get better. So we have to find a way to recruit, to retain, and ultimately to deliver products to market that are more effective. How are we going to do that? It ain't going to be by sticking by the status quo. So in terms of barriers to adoption, I think we've largely covered what's stopping us from doing what we need to. I will steal in the dying seconds one wrap-up comment from the panelists. Guillem, go for it first.
No, I mean, super excited to continue to have this conversation. Hopefully the next time we meet, we're going to be able to provide some real-world examples of technologies that have really made it in this regard. The challenge is amazing, but also the opportunity, it's worth taking. So yeah, my wrap-up comment.
I'm excited about the potential for patient data and passive data to become actually really useful to people. And I think AI and the ability for people to put their own data in and understand it, whatever that data may be, lab results, wearables, whatever it may be, and get their own view, I think that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably I can, use an example. A chronic disease, say diabetes, everyone knows a diet with a very high blood sugar, it potentially causes type 2 diabetes, right? But still, a lot of people won't take action to change lifestyle, right? So if we're able to leverage the EHR data and the passive data we collect from the patient and use these sort of biomarkers, AI models to determine risk scores of someone, developing type 2 diabetes, and be able to offer them this insight so then they can see that, look, with this trajectory, in 2 or 3 years, I might develop type 2 diabetes, then it becomes very real. And that's when lifestyle changes will happen. So that's where I leave it, I guess.
I agree. We literally do that on a graph for our consumers, and it's very, very powerful. I guess my kind of founder hat summary is a call to action to if you are sitting in the room and you are involved in DCTs or passive patient monitoring programs, or you're thinking about it, come and talk to us. The tools and technologies are there. As Guillem said, we're not lacking capability today. That's not the problem. The problem is finding people who are sufficiently innovative to take this forward and actually put it into a trial. And because it does seem to be the case that everyone agrees, there will be 1 or 2 fairly major shoes that drop, and when they do, the rest of the industry is going to have to play catch up and fast. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for